get started, the other option, have Photoshop open, have Zoom open. You could also have your Canvas lecture open. It's the Adobe Photoshop Basics lecture, and it's got the guy with the bubble and the goldfish swimming around him right at the top. Did any of you guys watch that full moon service video about how they made that image, composite image with the moons? I'm absolutely in love with that. It's just really amazing. Our first project, our Photoshop project, is going to be, bless you, Grant, a composite type of work, and I hope you take inspiration from that. So what you're going to follow along with if you're in Canvas is tab 2, Photoshop Basics, but I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and just kind of give you guys a tour of Photoshop. I'm gonna pull out the participants window so that if anybody has any questions, you guys can just give me a wave with the little emoji wave, and I will hopefully see it and stop to allow you to ask your question. On my screen, move you up here. All right, cool. So can you guys now all see my Photoshop interface? Yeah? Okay, cool. So every time you open Photoshop, it will automatically take you to this home page. It's called the home page. You can get to it when you're in the software. There'll be either a home icon or the Photoshop icon so that you can jump back to this home screen. I have been using Photoshop, so I have a bunch of images that pop up as recent images that I've been working on. When you first get started, you probably won't have this. And the main thing that I do when I get in here is just either create new or open an image. So I'm gonna create new, because your library's tutorial, the first one that you do is a create new situation. And I just want you to see this create new page, because this is something that is relatively new in the last few years for Adobe, but they have it in all of the software. And it's really helpful because it gives you a whole bunch of default starter file sizes, types, everything. And it gives you the ability to save your own presets, to create your own presets. And then you have access to all of these templates. Some of them are free and some of them are for purchase through Adobe Stock, but it's definitely a window that is interesting and worth playing with. In all of them, Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, I will use the presets because it's just really helpful. Like for instance, if you're going web or mobile, they already have it in here for you. The iPhone screen size. Let's show all of these different screen sizes so that you can start when you're working with web banners or desktop patterns. They do the same for web. It'll show you a row of them and you can just drop it down to open more. Everything in the software is relatively user-friendly, but you do have to look for it. You have to look for a minute to see where additional information may be, where there may be a drop down. Because these softwares can do so much, there is a ton of information. So it doesn't really matter where we start. I'm just going to start with a photo. I'm going to go with a default 5x7 size. And over here on the right, this is where you can change the preset details. And you'll use this on a regular basis. Depending on whether you're working with inches, which is usually what I do, unless I'm designing for web, and then I'll use pixels. What your resolution is, how sharp you want your image to use, how many dots per inch, that can be changed here. And all of this stuff can be changed once you're in the software and once you've created your file, but it works a million times better if you kind of know upfront what you're doing and you set all of your presets up before you actually create your document. So I'm happy with a 5x7, but I'm gonna go with a portrait instead of a landscape, and you can just, with the click of a button, flip-flop between the two. And then RGB is fine. RGB obviously is for screen. That was in our kind of design 101 information, but we could go grayscale, CMYK, we can do all kinds of stuff in the beginning. Your background contents is just what, once we create the file, it's the color that your canvas is. So depending on what you're working on, this is personal preference 100%. I always like to have white because it's just my default. You might want a black blank screen to start with or a transparent one. But let me just show you what it looks like. There it is with a white background. And this is your first look at the workspace for Photoshop. I know some of you guys have used Photoshop. Quick raise of hands. Who has never opened Photoshop until maybe today? Sarah? Miki? Anyone else? I can't see Bentley or Nancy. Being that that's true, I'm going to speed it up just a teeny bit and let you guys ask me questions, because I know from your student survey that I'm going to move you guys down here so that I'm not looking up at you. I know from your student survey that Photoshop is probably the one of all three of the software that most of you have been in at least a little bit. That's not going to work. Okay, so here's your workspace. This is probably the thing that you're going to want to look at first. Top right is your workspace presets. Essentials is, let me see what it looks like. Okay, so this is what Essentials looks like. And this is probably what it looks like when you first opened Photoshop. And I can't, because I use it on a regular basis, there's some stuff that I can't change to default for you guys to make it look a little more simple, but that's something that you're going to want to know how to do, and you're going to want to have to change back and forth, because that will determine what panels are being shown and what tools are being shown. So sometimes in the instructions, it will tell you to go to the layers panel or to go to the libraries panel, and you might not find it because for one reason or another, your workspace has defaulted to something else. So that's a great thing to know where it is. You can reset it every time so that it looks like how it's being described in the tutorials. But, and what I always do, you can also save your own preset. So I'm fairly particular about how my panels look and how they're organized in order to maximize my workspace. And also I'm old school and I like my tools to be in a double kind of a setup. This is the single, which really does make better use of the space because it runs the length of your artboard, but I always like it double. Any kind of changes like that you make, all of your panels are going to be on the right. So anytime I tell you panel, they're defaulted on the right unless you've actually grabbed the panel and physically moved it somewhere else, which you're welcome to do. You can redock it. You can undock it. I'm going to redock it. See that blue line? Dock it back up. You can move your toolbar. By default, tools are on the left, panels are on the right, but you can add additional panels to what's seen by going under window, and then they're all alphabetical. So if I mention a panel in a tutorial and you don't see it on the right-hand side, just open it under window, and that's where you can find any of them. I'm going to, for instance, let me just add, let me add a character. That's my fonts. And then the character window opens. It's kind of floating by itself right now. And I'm going to dock it to the rest of them. Can you guys see how it turns blue when you drag it over the kind of panel dock? And then I'm going to drop it in there. You can do all that customizing. You can make it look exactly how you like it with the panels you want. And then the thing to do is just to save it. So you just go back under that little workspace drop down and then say new workspace, and you can title it so that you can always go back to June 2020. It's still June, right? Oops. And now I've got that as a preset. So super helpful. always use that little drop down. Panels on the right, tools on the left. This bar across the top is called your control bar. This is also vital for Photoshop. You will see it in Illustrator and in InDesign as well, but its functionality is slightly different. The control bar in Photoshop changes depending on what tool you have selected. So right now I've got the Move tool. Great feature of Photoshop right now. All you have to do is hover over any of the tools and it will not only tell you what it is, it will show you the key command in parentheses for jumping to that tool. So the healing brush is J. So if I hit J, it jumps me to the healing brush. If I want the move tool back, hit V and I'm jumped back to the moving tool. That information can be obtained just by hovering over a tool, and then it'll also play you a little video of what the tool does. So it's really handy. Another thing that first-time Photoshop users often miss is, can you guys see the tiny little drop-down arrow in the bottom right of the tools? Some of them have it. Most of them have it. The zoom tool does not, but that is a click and hold situation that opens up what other tools are below that tool. So if I mention a tool in a tutorial and you don't see it anywhere, chances are it's under one of the other tools. So that's a little trick that comes up on the kind of often. These little 3 dots here is for you to edit and customize your toolbar. So that's something that you can also have at and make it exactly how you want it. Once you do that though, save it as a preset. So that way you can go back to it. Should you lose it, should you want to work on Photoshop on another computer, once you sign into your Adobe ID, your preset should be in there and you can load it on a different computer and have your same workspace situation. So there's all of that. Those are the main kind of geography aspects of Photoshop. Some real common basic navigation things would be the ruler, which you can turn off and on with Command R. I'm a big fan of the ruler. I always like to have it on. So it's Command R, and if you double click in the top right, you can reset the top left to be your zeroed out point, or you can actually move it. So if you want your 0 to be in the middle, it's just a click and drag and it makes your, So that's a navigation thing. The other thing that's a big one is holding down spacebar. And let me zoom in. You know what? I need to open a photo so that we can actually look at something. Let's see here. I'm gonna go back to home. Top left, it's a little home icon. And I will open up, let's see here. I'm gonna look at this photo of old Zach. I'm not sure why I have this, but I opened it for some reason. Open. Oh, I know it's not on the computer. How about the ballerina? This open? Okay, so if you're working on a photo and you don't want to use either this, scrolling with a mouse or using your sliders, holding down the space bar is a huge thing to get your little hand tool and move yourself around. I use that all the time, so that's a shortcut to know. And then also Command spacebar for zooming in and out. So those are probably my 2 biggest navigation tips, because they're ones that I use all the time when I'm working on a photo, zooming in, moving, the image around so that I can get to exactly the point that I want to get to and see exactly what I want to see without having to change tools. Those tools are in the toolbar, and you could very well just go and grab the zoom tool and then go grab the hand tool. But just knowing the shortcuts for those make kind of your workflow and your process a lot easier. Those are the basics. Those are the main things that I would want you to know getting in there and working on it. Saving your file is obviously super important, and that's going to be under the file menu. similar to any other app software that you use. Command Z, also super huge for Adobe softwares. Command Z is your undo tool. Photoshop defaults at undoing the last 50 things that you did. So it's chronological, and you can just, let's see here, I'll get my lasso tool and I'll just kind of like, I'm just clicking and holding and dragging with the lasso tool to select part of the fence. And what if I just like deleted that? I'm gonna cut it, just Command X, and now I've got a huge hole in my thing. You can command, and I could do 50 other things on top of that, and all I have to do is Command Z to undo those things. We will get more into it later as far as undoing steps out of order. There's a history panel which will show you everything you've done since you've opened the file, so you can kind of go back and look and see where things may have gone wrong. But we're gonna work in the future a little bit on, say we want to keep what we did with the brush tool, but we want to undo what we did with the cutting pixels. We'll get into that a little bit later. So Command Z is important, and then knowing where your panels are. We're going to work, and it's a huge thing for Photoshop is you want to always do non-destructive editing, which means that if we were going to make changes to this photo, if we really did want to cut a huge hole in the fence, that we don't want to do it to the original. We always want to do it to a copy of the original. All you have to do, this is a locked background layer right now because the photo was a flattened file without any layers. I don't know if you guys got a chance to watch the little video of Tariq, my web developer, and if you saw all of the layers in his Photoshop file while he was creating his funny little image of himself. But you always want to duplicate your layer, which is, on your layer, on your layer panel, there is what I call a hamburger menu. It's the 3 little lines, and you can duplicate your layer and then make all the changes you want to that layer, and you still have your original layer below. These little eyeballs here are to just turn off each layer so you can see what you're doing. If I wanted to just paint right on top in a totally new layer, you can add a layer. If you hover long enough over any of the icons, it'll tell you what they do. But I really want you guys to just get in here and play with it, because that is going to be the best way to learn. So the things that I've assigned to you as far as quick little tutorials and things to watch are all things that should help you to start getting the hang of it and start playing around in Photoshop in such a way that it's going to teach you the basics by default, just by doing the things. So anybody have any questions to this point? And I know some of you like have it dialed and spend a ton of time in Photoshop already, but for those of you who have yet to, we're just opening Photoshop for the first time, is there anything that really seems mysterious or confusing? No? You're good? Yeah? All right, cool. Let me just point out in the, let's see if I can switch my share screen really quick. Pop. And I want to share my canvas. How about this one? Okay, so here is said lecture. I have broken this down kind of the same way I did the tour into the workspace, the geography of the software itself, and how to kind of navigate around it. If you go further in, you will get to see some of the basic tools. And these are ones that we will use on a regular basis. You'll use on a regular basis for all of the kind of manipulation and photo editing that we do. But they're broken up into what kind of tools they are, and that's kind of important to remember. So you've got retouching tools that are working with an existing photo, artist and creator tools where you can create stuff from scratch. You can create images and artwork and illustrations in Photoshop just from a blank canvas. And then the essentials. I skipped over that on accident, sorry. I kept it as simple as possible because you could literally do what he did with the moons with those tools. So it's really all you need to know to get in there and make it happen. Later this week, and I don't know if you guys looked through both weeks of content, you will get our first project, the Photoshop, the Change the Context project that I was talking about, and you'll have the opportunity to do a composite, to do work with your layers, to merge photos, and do all kinds of fun stuff. So you will see this over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to repeat putting those pages in a module. I'll put the same pages in next week's module, so you'll see them again in order, and you'll have to next through them when you don't want them. But I didn't want you to have to go back out of week 4 back into week 3 to find the pages. So I'm going to continue to just put them in every time until that assignment is done, which is really only after next week, I think. So yeah, I don't, let me see one more thing. Okay. And then on the basics lecture, and I don't know if you guys have had time yet or not, but these videos are also just going to give you like an amazing kind of tour and foundation for all you need to know to create a composite photo and just to know your way around Photoshop. So that is, stop share. More or less all that I have for you kind of in a nutshell, just because I don't want to do too much, since I know Photoshop is the one that most of you have spent some time in already. So the basics might be a little redundant. I don't want to waste your time, but I would be happy for those of you who have not used Photoshop yet to go more in depth or answer any questions if you have them. Or, Grant and I think Kyle, Alice, you guys all used Photoshop before? Yeah, if you have any like more advanced questions or things that you want to bring to the table that you think are important, I would be happy to speak about that as well. I'm real conscious of our Zoom time, not only because it is not the easiest way to learn, but I don't want to give you too much information in this short amount of time and have things get confused. So I'd really want to open it up for any questions or comments. But if we don't have any, then I would love to just let you guys tackle it. I really appreciate those of you who have brought things to my attention that didn't seem quite right in the coursework, so I can fix it really quick before everybody gets lost. And I'm really excited that we're finally in the software. It's gonna get more difficult now that we are, but it's gonna get way more fun. So yeah, so there's that. All right, so you guys, the core group, this is always how it is. The people that show up are the ones that need the help the least. So if nothing else, I mean, I'll cut you guys loose early, and I'm here, all week if you need one-on-one help. If once you get started on the very first thing you're going to be doing for your project is looking for photos and developing an idea and kind of trying to use some of those graphic design principles that we learned last week for creating your own advertisement. So you'll be doing, sketching and research and looking for stock photos. I put a list of stock photo sites along with the instructions for the Change the Context project and the submission page, and all 3 of those I'll continue to put, and you'll just see them repeated so you have easy access to them. But yeah, does anyone have questions about that project? Did you guys get a chance to look over the assignment at all? A little bit? Okay, yeah, if not, I'm here. Just email me. We can always do, well, I have office hours tomorrow, and we can always do like another Zoom later in the week if that's helpful. All right. Okay, guys. You're so quiet today. I'm gonna cut you loose. I'm going to stop the recording, And then, yeah, that's about it. Thank you. All right. Have a great rest of the week.